Hello! In this video I'm going to be using the biped structure to rig a video game character with the skin modifier. Before we start, I should tell you up front I am not going to be rigging the face, so if you're looking at that, I'm not going to be doing that. And also I should probably admit that I'm not massively experienced in this stuff, but I haven't seen too many great tutorials on this stuff, and those that I have seen do seem to take their sweet time, so I don't want to commit that offense, so I'm going to get straight stuck into it. But before I do that, it's important to make sure that your model is basically as finished as you feel capable of making it. And this basically means checking that you've got enough geometry and your topology is suitable for deforming. So what do I mean by that? By that I mean that when you bend these links, let's say that you've got an arm that looks great, out straight. When you think about bending it, you need to figure out where you want the resulting geometry to be when that arm is bent. And for a whole discussion on best practices for doing that and some examples, I strongly recommend you head over to Polycount, which has a really great few pages on their wiki on sort of a discussion of what good deforming stuff is and things. So head over there if you're not sure what to do with that stuff. I'm not going to talk about that anymore though. I just want to show you rigging for this video. Okay, so let's get stuck in. First thing we're going to do is make a biped. The way we do that is head over to the Create tab. Under Systems, we're not going to use bones. That means you can build it by hand. We're just going to go straight in with the sort of pre-built biped. I'm going to do this from the front viewport, just a little bit easier to get the size right. So click biped, and we just drag it into our scene. Which doesn't put it on the floor. Let's not use that. Let's use perspective, because that puts it on the floor for us. The thing we're trying to get right here is the pelvis. Now, your character might look, your biped might look a little bit different. That's because I'm using right now the human male. Let me show you how you can change that if you wish to. Under the Motion tab, I'm just going to drag up because I'm partway down this. Turn on Figure Mode, okay, which is under Biped Rollout. Little guy here, and under Structure there's a choice for body type. You've probably got skeleton by default. I'm going to be using male. Shouldn't make a huge amount of difference, but there we go. And you should probably set how many bones you want of each of these things. So for me, I'm quite happy to just have one thumb and one finger, because I'm not going to be rigging all those fingers separately. And I'm happy with just one toe bone as well. So things that I would have changed would have been the toe links, and changed. I think I took the spine links down to just 3 rather than 4, things like that. So set that up as your needs require. And now let's get to positioning our biped to match our character. Again, I want you to make sure you're in figure mode, okay? Because that's what we need while we're rigging. When you're not in figure mode, essentially you're animating your skeleton or moving it around in the scene. That's something you do once you've rigged it. But before you rig, you want this to be in figure mode. So I'm in figure mode, all well and good. I haven't deselected my my little biped controller thing, so moving it around moves the whole thing around. But if you have, for whatever reason, deselected it, you need to, if you click once on the pelvis and then click again, then you'll select the thing inside of it. If I turn on F3, you'll see we've got a little helper thing. It's like a little gem, kind of, I don't know what you call that. There's probably a mathematical name for that, I don't know what that is. But that's what we're using to move this around. And I'm just going to set this to be at 0, 0, so that's dead in the middle of the scene, which I know my character is as well. I'm going to hit F3 to go to wires, and I'm going to basically be positioning everything from here. So as you can see, the pelvis is in roughly the right spot. That's probably the starting point for you. You could go up a little bit, so I'm going to go up a teensy bit with that, and that will of course mean my feet are off the ground, but don't worry, we're going to scale the legs to fix that. And from here, the way I personally work is to scale outwards one part at a time, and using just one side. So I'm going to be focusing on my character's right half, which is, as you look at it, the left half of the screen. I'm going to be trying to match everything here. So the first thing to match, whoops, so I've selected my character. Quick thing I recommend you do is just freeze that, right click, freeze selection. That way I'm not going to click on it again by accident. And make sure that our pelvis is looking right. I'm going to be doing this in perspective mode. but you could probably do it any other way you choose. For some reason, the scaling thing always works a little wonky, so you scale in the direction you think is that way and it actually scales in the direction, so you'll have to forgive me if I keep getting the wrong one. I'm going to be doing that a lot. So just scaling these out, and rotating these is fine too. Trying to get them to match roughly where my characters are. And very important, very important that you get the actual joint to be in perfectly the right spot. That's the main thing we're aiming to do with all of this. So I want my knee joint to be precisely where the knee is on my character. If it's too high, the deformation won't make sense. It'll just be terrible. So number one most important thing that you're prioritizing above all else is getting the joint to be in the correct spot. So I'm going to basically go through doing that. So at the minute it's a little too far forwards. Let's bring it down, and I'll do that for half my character. And I've got a broken leg. It's a bit odd. But I'm not going to show you all of that, so I'll probably skip at this point. Any other things I should be showing you before I skip? You're working essentially from the pelvis out. You know, start with the pelvis and then the spine and then the shoulder. The clavicle you can move freely on its own. This is the clavicle bone. So if your shoulder's a little further out, I've got quite a wide-shouldered guy here. Things like that. And now I can see it's a little too high up where I've placed it just there. So that can move independently of the rest of the rig. Yeah, let's skip that for now. I'm just going to be scaling and stuff. So I'll see you in a second. Okay, so I've skipped ahead to a rig that I have set up pretty much about right. I think I might have changed this later as I've gone along, but I've deliberately messed up my other half of the the rig, so I can show you how I copy and paste from one side to another. Okay, so to do that, we just pick all of the bones on just one half, only the ones that we want to copy across. There's no need to pick the middle ones at all at this stage. So I've got all of the leg and feet bones and the arm and fingers, and I want to basically duplicate their positions and rotations onto my other side. Okay, so in the with those selected in the motion tab, still in figure mode, absolutely make sure you're still in figure mode. I want to expand the copy paste rollout. With my selection made, I want to create a new collection, and I can call this whatever, so I'll just call this right half. Oops, and apparently I didn't click anything. Let's try that again. Right half. And we want to copy that pose, so we click on copy the posture. My mistake, copy the posture. The posture is it in figure mode, I guess. So copy posture, and you'll see it's made a little screenshot, and the red is the bits that you had selected. Now without changing your selection, we want to paste posture opposite. And there it is, so it's now positioned at, you know, just right with the other half of the bones. Okay, good. So our skeleton is now set up, ready to be rigged. Let me just for a moment freeze all of those. So I'm selecting everything. Actually, I'll unfreeze everything first, and then freeze my selection. So at the minute, the only thing I can click on is my my dude. Okay, and as you can see now, I have this guy. Just hide unselected. I have this guy unwrapped and textured. Not essential, but recommended. I do recommend you have him at least unwrapped, just so that you can throw on a checkerboard, which maybe I'll do now. Throw on a checkerboard just to check your joint deformation and stuff, in case you need to make any cuts or whatever. Hopefully you don't. Hopefully you've you know, got your mesh figured out by this point. But yeah, so I do recommend you unwrap it and whatnot. And again, texturing is nice if you've done that already. In some ways, why not? I guess the only reason why not is if you're going to change the geometry, but hopefully you won't change it so radically that it makes too much difference. Okay, so we've built the bones and set the structure, position them as appropriate. Before I start rigging him, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start animating my bones. So let's unhide everything. blah blah blah, and I'm just going to hide my character, so I'm only looking at my bones. That's all of these here. Oh, they're frozen, that's why there we go. All my bones, and I'm going to start animating them. So why am I doing this? I'm doing this so that I can test my rig whilst I'm rigging it. So what kind of animation do we need? Now we could grab some mocap thing, which might be good, but I personally like, I found it easier to work with an animation which tests the limits and the extremes of my movement in a more sort of observable fashion rather than everything all going on at once. So what do I mean by that? I mean by that basically test one thing at a time. So animation, if you're not familiar with doing this at all, the easiest way to do this is to select something, turn on auto key, which makes this little thing go red. Your viewport should go kind of red here, and I'm just going to be rotating them. I'm not going to be scaling them because that's usually not what humans will do while they move. They usually just rotate their bones and limbs and stuff. And with auto key on, I'm going to probably just quickly select everything and give everything, can I give it all a quick wibble to 0? Will that make, okay, yeah, of course not, that's a silly mistake on my part. You need to come out of figure mode, which was under the motion tab in the biped, to come out of figure mode, and then quickly animate everything to go absolutely nowhere. This just sets a keyframe, at least I hope it does, yeah, because that's a keyframe on frame 0, yeah, so that everything's in its default position. And then it's easy enough usually to pick 2 at once and just move them around, and it set keyframes, test each part. So I'm testing the shoulder. Let's test the shoulders fully first. So we're going to go back, that's it, forwards, and then back as far as you're likely to go, which probably is no more than there, and then 15. Then we're going to go up. Oops. Yeah, that usually is pretty tough for a game character to go that high. We'll go no higher than that, I think. So yes, humans can move more than this, but hopefully our animation won't need to. And then down as low as they're going to go. And then just for testing the other joints, we're going to go forwards again. There should be fine. I'm going to test the elbows at this point. And again, your elbows can go further, but let's hope your animation doesn't need them to, because that would probably hurt your geometry. Those elbows aren't going to go back any more than they were already, so no real need to test them more than putting them straight back. Your hands, now we could start twisting just the hands. Usually when you twist your hand, I guess the forearm follows. I haven't found the biped particularly useful when moving these, because this doesn't move any part of this forearm at all, so this can be a bit shaky. But let's give it a quick animation. And essentially we're just going through testing all this stuff, so I'm not going to bore you with showing you absolutely every step of this, but you get the idea. So let's skip another little bit and I'll have that set up. Okay, as you may have guessed by this point, I'm working forwards through a rig I've already done, so something I show you may differ from what I end up doing after each little jump. So in this particular case I actually extended the timeline. I'll quickly show you how to do that. There's a little button time configuration here. If we click on that, we can change our end time. I just gave myself some more time so that I could have 10 frames between each stopping point. 10 or 20 or whatever, and this is basically the animation I went for, so I'm just going to hit play to show you what I've got here. So testing the shoulders, arms, elbows, hands, fingers, thumbs, resetting those, the neck and head, testing the spine, the legs, the knees, and that's it. Although I think later as I went through my animation I noticed that I hadn't tested whether the arm, the hands flapping up and down, and the shoulders twisting from the waist. So I think I added those in later, further down the line. But you can do that, that's not a problem. It's just nice to have something set up before we start rigging. Okay, so let's unhide again our model. So here he is. And let's start rigging it. So what we need to do first of all is to tell our mesh, our final character, that we want to use the bones here. And the way we do that and the way we rig it is, well, you can use the physique modifier or you can use the skin modifier. I'm going to be using the skin modifier for this demonstration. I've used both, and I have to say I much prefer the skin modifier now, so let's use that. Let's give ourselves a bit more room. So what's in the skin modifier? Maybe I'll just drag this out so we can see a little better. There's a bunch of different rollouts. The first one we're going to use is the parameters. So right now it doesn't have any bones, so we need to fix that. We need to give it some bones that it can look at. So just click on this add button here, and it's going to give us a list of the stuff we've got, and all of these are bones that have been made by the biped we put in. These are all names of the actual bone objects. You see them all called BIP, that's for biped. We want all of these, so we can click on the top, shift click on the bottom, or just Control A, whatever, and click select. This will add them all to our list of bones which the skin modifier is looking at. Okay, let's hide unselected, so it's just hiding our bones, and let's see whether we've got anything already working. We have. However, it's stretching in some pretty funny places. That's not surprising because we haven't told it how we want to rig it to our skin modifier, so to our bones. So bits that go wrong, you can drag this or scrub, whatever you want to call it. Very obvious things for me. I mean, the shoulders are pretty bad. You can see when he lifts his arms up. That is not how someone lifts. That's just weird. And other things which are particularly wrong are, yep, there we go. That one's really obvious. You can see that part of his little, like, I don't know what this is, document tube thing on his back, one of his accessories, is going up with his head, which and down indeed with his head, which definitely ain't right. All things that we need to fix probably by hand, but there are various degrees of by hand, and the first one, the first sort of fixing that's the quickest and most broadest is to use the envelopes. So let's edit the envelopes. Now, at the minute I have select envelopes and cross sections on, and probably there are some viewing options that I've got set on, but this I think is pretty normal. So slightly confusing about this is you can't ever select more than one envelope or cross section. If I click and drag, it'll still only pick one of them. Selecting just one shows you in colors how heavily weighted vertices on your mesh are to a given envelope. So think of envelopes a little bit like your bones. One bone has one envelope. So this would be the clavicle bone that this is looking at. And you'll notice there are two little capsules. One bright red one inside of one larger dark red one. These are these sort of spheres of influence, or capsules of influence for that bone. So these are called our envelopes. The inside envelope, everything within the inside envelope is affected by that bone 100%. Everything between this and this envelope, between the inner and outer envelope, is sort of linearly weighted to that bone. So here it'll be 100. You know, somewhere about here will be about 50. I know there isn't any geometry here, but if there were, it would be about 50, and here would be about 0. And this is color coded. So red is 100%. There's not too much red because other envelopes are also reaching this far, and blue is barely affected at all. But if I pick maybe, let's see, the head one, we've probably got some reds on this one. Yeah, because no other envelopes are reaching as high as this hat. This is 100% red, even though it's not actually within the inside sphere. So that's a little confusing to get your head around. Basically, it will be, the way skin works is it will be weighted as best it can to a bone, to an envelope, if it's within, you know, one of the spheres. But if it's fully within the 100% sphere, that doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% to that envelope if other envelopes are reaching it. So in the case of, let's see the clavicle here, although these are probably within the envelope here, they're also within other envelopes, and they're kind of fighting for that. So we need to go about editing these. This is a much quicker way of doing it than you know, vertex by vertex, but we will later need to do vertex by vertex. But let's try and do these because they do lots at once, and when you've got a a dense mesh, it's pretty quick to use the envelopes. So again, we're just going to use one side because we can copy it across. That's not too troublesome. So just editing one side here. Here are the controls that we have available to us. The first one that you'll want to change and or fix would probably be the start and end point. You see this yellow line here. If I I think I just click on it, do I? I think yeah, I must have it selected already. It's gone sort of this pinky purple, and I can move this around. This is affecting, even though the bone isn't moving, this is affecting its envelope. On the whole, you want the envelope to be about where the bone is, but for this, no, this one's probably about right, but what I can tell you is this one, oh goodness, I don't really know. I'll maybe pull this one up. I just don't want them to be quite so close together. That's probably a little better. And this is going very far down the arm, and this is just the forearm. We don't really want it to go much further than that, I don't think, somewhere about there. So we can move those around. We can also, I'm sure you will have guessed, scale these capsules. Now, normally you only have 2 points to scale them with, and you pick one of the outside, you notice each cross-section, they call these, 4 points, and you just click and drag to scale these. They must remain as circles, you can't have ovals, and you know that will mean that they extend. If you want them to be wider, they'll also extend further. So sometimes you will need to then tweak afterwards if this isn't what you want. But to be honest, this is probably about right. And we need to pull this way down because we don't want that to go quite so far. Same for this one, way down. Yeah, that's not too bad. I'm going to pull this a little further up because we don't want it to go quite so far down. There we go, that's looking pretty good. These are kind of yellow, so we know that they're being weighted to something else, and we probably don't want them to be. So yeah, let's change this down. You notice as I pull this in, presumably these become a little bit more orange because they're not so heavily affected. And indeed, I can probably pull these. I don't really want to do that too much. I'll just move this up and pull this out, and let's keep this one a little bigger, something like that. And you just work your way through all of them, setting them to be where you want them to be. And of course we can examine our rig while we're doing this. You'll notice that, say, what was that particularly bad point? It was when he raised his arms. This is, if you want to compare it to the right hand side, already a little bit better. So bits that I've messed up basically are this vertex is no longer within its sphere of influence, so oops, make this a bit bigger to make sure that we capture that. Probably, this would be why. Back in its, remember at frame 0 it's exactly the same as my figure position. So some of these arms are being caught by the spine, that's why that's going out. So as I bring this in, you'll see these are no longer blue. I'm going to show you that though at this frame to make an important point here. Now, right now these might not be, I think they probably are, but they might not have been inside the sphere of influence. But they're making a change because our envelope, which affects sort of the figure pose position stuff, is changing. So that's making a difference at this frame, which means that by the time it's animated, it makes a difference up here. So we're not messing up our arms so much. So already you can see the arms getting a little bit better. And essentially we're just going to spend a bit more time working through each of these, making sure, you know, as we look at our rig, that things are moving as we expect them to. So for example, these fingers, you know, 2 of these fingers aren't even moving when we move the finger bone. That's because this isn't wide enough, so I should be working on this side, shouldn't I? So we make this wider, and that means that as I made that wider, you'll see these fingers are, you know, pulling down with the other ones. Yeah. And again, I'm going to do another skip on you, so you can see what's going on here. Just continue working through setting the envelopes for this half. Before I do that, I will show you one other thing. I haven't found it to be of use for me, but it might be for you. You can insert a new cross-section. How do you do that? I can't quite remember, but there is a way. Okay, so right-click, click on Add Cross-Section, and click where you want to make a cross-section. The benefit of this is it means you can have a slightly different shape of capsule in the middle, so you can control it in the middle in this way, which may be of benefit to you. Like I say, I didn't find it to be much use. Another useful thing is if you're scaling one half and you want the other half to look the same, but it's on the same bone. Remember, we're not worrying too much about the bones which have a symmetrical opposite, but for those bones which themselves are, in the middle, one quick thing you can do is just copy paste, say for example just this Z value here to the other side, and it'll be the same on the other side. So that's another useful little trick. Okay, I guess I'll let you get on with that. I'll do mine and load up where I finished off this step at. Okay, so I've loaded up one of my saves that I think was pretty much where I was at before I started changing them vertex by vertex. So let's take a quick look at where we're at the minute. Oops. The arms, shoulders looking a bit better. Notice that there's some slight, it's the cylinder on the back's become a bit deformed. Again, hands a bit wobbly, but remember I've hardly got any bones here, but I think we can probably sharpen that up a little bit. You can see there's a bit of weirdness going on in the forearm here as that hand moves, so that's not good. So we'll be fixing that probably by hand. And as I move my head, we've got that problem at the back where it's just the envelope has just caught that back cylinder. So as those legs move to the bottom of the bag, it's going way out of whack, so that we don't want to happen. And we can probably, the crowbar's getting all messed up there. Some of it's moving, some of it isn't. Very confusing. So lots of little things that we need to fix that really we can't do with just envelopes alone. I should probably show you quickly now how you would copy across your envelopes from one half to the other half, because no doubt you've just rigged half your character, and if it's symmetrical then you'll want to know how to move the envelopes across. Moving envelopes across is pretty much faultless. You can't go wrong. Copying across vertex weighting is pretty robust, but it's not perfect. For that reason, I suggest at this stage, before you start weighting any vertices, one by one, you satisfy yourself, hopefully you've got a good idea of how your deformations are working, satisfy yourself that you have enough geometry and you do not need to cut anywhere. Adding new geometry isn't too bad, but let me quickly explain why cutting your geometry or removing unwanted vertices and stuff like that from inside of a mesh is perhaps bad. The way these work is, if you're weighting vertex by vertex, each vertex will have a number. If you add a whole new element to your editable poly underneath the skin, probably not a problem, because adding a new element will give them fresh new numbers outside of the range already being used. However, when you start removing vertices, if inside of a mesh, it has to renumber lots of vertices, which means everything gets all mixed up and jumbled up. So this is the last stage before there's no going back. So make sure your geometry is fine. Okay, that's out the way. Let me show you how to mirror the envelopes from one side to another. So with edit envelopes on, we go to, you probably guessed this already, under mirror parameters, mirror mode, and we want to copy across, paste green to blue bones, and paste green to blue verts. If for some reason, and this does sometimes happen, your model doesn't have green and blue dots on it, it's probably because your mirror offset is in the wrong place. So for example, if you just got red, it doesn't find any, it's not finding any mirroring things, so we just need to slide the offset to the midpoint and suddenly it'll go bang. There we go. And it's seen, oh yes, look, you've got lots of stuff that's mirrored. Important notes to make: this isn't a symmetrical mesh. I've got a bag on one side, a crowbar on another. This thing cuts right the way through the middle. Doesn't matter. Anything that is symmetrical, so all of his body, his legs, it'll figure those out. It's really clever like that. I'm kind of impressed by this stuff, so well done Autodesk or whoever actually developed this skinning modifier. So yeah, don't worry if your body isn't symmetrical. And we just copy paste one to another. So I'm just, because I sorted out my green side first, that'll do that first. Actually, I'm not sure whether you have to do Control A to pick everything first, but yeah, you'll figure it out. Okay, so mirror mode off. Let's show you weighting vertices one by one. So you probably had on ticked envelopes and cross section, and you were able to pick these fellas here, but you weren't able to pick your actual vertices. Let's switch over now to vertices. And first of all, let's fix this, because this is going to be the easiest one. If I turn on select element, that'll just mean it'll pick everything in this element, which is a quick way of doing it. You could also just pick one and just hammer grow. That's another thing I tend to do if I'm feeling lazy. And that'll pick all of them in that element. Let's now scroll down, and I apologise, my screen isn't very big, so this is one massive rollout. We're going down to the bottom of this rollout. That's the, what is this? Where's the first? Well, the parameters rollout. Bottom of the parameters rollout. I'm looking for something called weight table. Let's click on that to bring that up. It doesn't matter that it looks like I've got an envelope selected. Ignore that. That's just an annoyance. And we get this whole bunch of numbers and bone names and columns and stuff. It looks a whole world of confusing. It isn't too bad. I don't have a lot of room here, so I'm going to try and move this. If you've got two screens, it's really nice to put this weight table on your other screen. Strongly recommended. So, what are we looking at? What we're looking at here is a list of our vertices. So, at the minute I've changed this to selected vertices. That's a much nicer way of looking at it, rather than all of them. So these are all the vertices I've got selected, and it's telling me how they're weighted. So if I were to pick this vertex here, I can see that it is weighted fully, with a value of 1, to spine 2, which is, I think this one, or maybe that one, whatever. But I've gone and changed my selection, so I'm just going to undo to go back to my previous selection. In fact, you can click on that, and it'll tell you which one it is. So it's this one. So this vertex is weighted fully to this this spine. What I really want is I want it to be weighted to the middle spine. Spine connection. So I'm going to select the column here, just to make sure that's the right one. So yeah, that's the bone I want it to weight to, and I'm going to pick from the top right the way down to the bottom. Oh, I can't do shift click because that would be too easy. So instead I have to click and drag, which is really silly, but you know, whatever. Make sure I've got all those selected. I've missed one, so I'm just going to hold down Control and click on it. So you can use Control to select one by one. I missed one at the top. So I've got all of these, and they've gone all purple, so purpley pink. I can see which ones I've got. And all I'm going to do is type into this top one, simple double click, and I'm going to type number 1, which just means they're going to be weighted fully to that spine. And of course, now that I'm looking at this spine, they've all gone red. That whole element has gone red. So let's take a look at that in our animation now. So more interested when he bends forward. Bend forward for me, somewhere about here. There we go. Whoa, very quick. And you'll notice that whole element no longer deforms in any way other than, you know, as one big thing. It's all static, so it's not getting stretched by anything else. And when he was looking up, it doesn't change. Cool. So that was a dead easy one to do. Let's take a look at a slightly more difficult one. Let's fix up his neck. So I'm going to turn on wires, which is a very useful thing when you're rigging. And let's look at that little neck as he turns around. Now you'll notice that it's all very it's moving as one big chunk. I'm looking particularly at this bottom row. It's all fully moving with the rest of the neck, and yet this loop beneath it is not moving at all. We probably want it to be a bit more gradual. You see how that's suddenly going all in one direction, then it's pretty much a straight line. We probably want these to be a bit more gradual. So how are we going to do that? We're going to pick this vertex here and this vertex here, and then it's clever, you see, when I scroll up and click on loop, it'll recognize that, oh, I've got a loop there, and yeah, it's helpful. Bring up my weights table again, which probably I would have had off screen, but whatever. And let's see what they're looking at. So, spine 2, a bunch of them are weighted a very small amount. This is, you know, their greatest is like 5%, so that's pretty low weighting. So a little bit on spine 2. Some of them, interestingly, a fair bit on the clavicle. That's interesting, but most of them are weighted to the neck. This one's almost fully weighted to the neck, and the least is, you know, about 0.447, whatever. So how are we going to fix our little problem? Solution probably is to weight them more to this spine bone here. So how does that fix our problem? When this neck moves around to the right, it is moving that neck bone a lot. We don't want these to twist entirely with the neck bone. We want to keep them to this spine bone so that they're, you know, not twisting around as much. So with them all selected, now I could type, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to click and drag, and that's just going to increase them slowly, all by however much they were. So some of these had a little bit more, some of them had a little bit less. It's going to respect that. and it's going to be fine with that. Now I don't want to move them all the way over to there, that's just silly, because then we've got the same problem on the next loop up. We want them a little bit, so we're going to go for maybe 0.45, no, maybe a bit less, 0.3, something like that. And you'll see now the neck is moving in a much more, it's not all being done on, on one set of one loop of polygons, it's being done across 2 loops, and that looks a lot more natural. In truth, probably a neck wouldn't twist quite as much as this anyway. Necks are funny things. If you're a guy, just feel your Adam's apple and like twist your neck round. It's almost like it doesn't move, so that's a really confusing thing there. But I don't know, it just looks better when it moves. Am I allowed to do that? Just do things because they look better that way? Maybe that's just wrong. Whatever. Anyways, those are most of the tools for rigging a 1x1 and most of the situations when you would rig vertex by vertex. So to control things in loops sometimes, maybe to just control them 1x1, and just to fix up elements which are you probably wanted to be weighted just to one bone. Those are the ways you do it. You can type into that vertex table. Oh, one final thing that I will show you is the painting blend weights. Now, I didn't use this too much, but it's a pretty cool tool. If you've got a vertex, an envelope selected, so let's say, whoops, slide up again. Oh, I wish this was bigger. And I'm picking my envelopes, and I'm picking, yeah, okay, so I've got this envelope here, and I want to, if it maybe paint. I'm going to untick paint blend weights to show you what the normal way of painting is. I paint with my left mouse button, and I'm painting what I want to be part of this bone. So I'm making things weighted to this bone. Okay. I can also hold down Alt and make things no longer weighted to that bone. And there are settings for this here. If I bring this up, and there's a whole complicated screen of stuff. So knock yourself out figuring that lot out. However, I find it more useful to actually paint blend weights. So what is this doing? Let's say, for example, let's turn that off. No, it's not. Let's turn that on. But let's make this a lot smaller. Control Shift drag to make things smaller. And I'm going to paint, not blend weights, I'm going to paint some random vertex here, okay, to be really heavily weighted to that spine. Okay, so these vertices are weighted really heavily to this spine bone. Now that's a little unusual. What we're going to do is paint the blend weights and try and blend it. And I'm going to use a bigger radius brush, so Control Shift again. And what it's doing now is it's saying, oh, I see that like that's weighted to that bone. I'm going to try and make that a little bit more of a gentle gradient. And although it's kind of doing red here, there we go, that's a bit better. It's I should have been clicking in a slightly different place. So if I click about here, then it's going to start to soften the edges of it and make that a little less of a harsh transition from red to nothing. And so again up here, this will probably extend these blues out a little further. Those are pretty gentle transition anyway. If I'd have used it on my neck, I might have been able to solve that problem without going into the weights table, and you can see it's softening the transition a bit there. So that's a pretty neat little feature. But I'm done with painting the blend weights. So again, probably just rig 1/2 and then go to mirror mode, and this time make sure you use paste green to blue verts, because it's the vertices you've weighted now. It is possible to change your envelopes after you've done vertex weighting, but I wouldn't rely on it. I would try and stick to envelopes first, then fix things vertex by vertex. That's pretty much all of what I know about rigging. Hopefully this is enough to get you off the ground, and you can try out your various animations on your character and see if they're all working. They should be looking good. Once you've done that, I do recommend you try and get a hold of a motion capture video just to try out something that's a bit more natural looking than this, which is obviously very staged. So if you think you've got your rig done, try it out on a mocapped animation. You'll have to Google for those. I don't know where you can get them from. Well, I do, but it'd be too long-winded to explain it. I hope this video is useful. I'm sorry it took so long, but I promise you you won't find a faster explanation of all this stuff, I don't think. Thanks for watching.